really excited to be at this presentation is primarily that I am sick of the ratio being reversed. So I am very grateful for all the men in the room, but what you need to understand is that every other time we're in conference rooms like this, it's the opposite. And so I attended a panel, or a conference earlier this year, I should say, that had 75 speakers, interviewers, interviewees, panelists, and there were 7 women. And I was so frustrated. So I was looking around the room at this conference, though, and there were more women in the audience than 10%, which is roughly what was being reflected on stage. So I started talking to my peers in the audience, and I asked them, you know, what do you do? How are you a woman in the industry? How are you getting along? And a lot of the women that I was talking to ended up being lawyers. So it made me think, okay, maybe there's something, and we all know the legal industry isn't perfect, but maybe there's something that the legal industry is doing right that's helping women stay in the industry and get involved in clean tech. So I started thinking about this, and I started thinking about, okay, well, why does this even matter? How do we convince people that this is an issue that they should care about? So for starters, and we all know this, so I'll gloss over this pretty quickly, but if you don't have representation at the top with diversity, you don't get representation at the bottom. Implicit bias means that white men at the top are going to keep hiring white men like them. And so unless you've got programs in place that encourage implicit bias to be eliminated, including, you know, implicit bias workshops, et cetera, or unless you have representation with diversity at the top, you're less likely to get representation otherwise. The next thing is that having a diverse working environment actually results in better performance. Studies have shown that if you have a woman on your board, your financial results will actually be higher than companies that do not have women on their board. And then finally, women in leadership positions, and someone mentioned this earlier, are going to result in there being decisions that are better for women generally. And so if you've got people in power who are taking their own personal experience as women in the industry and saying, hey, I experienced X, Y, Z, and therefore I need this policy to encourage that never to happen, they're going to make that policy happen because they've made it to the top and they're in a position of authority. And so now that we've identified those issues, the question then becomes, okay, well, how do we solve these problems? So starters, implement those policies. One thing that we do at MoFo, and yes, it's MoFo, and yes, there's swag out there, and that is what we call ourselves, and we fully embrace, at least I fully embrace it. So one of the things that we do at MoFo is we've signed on to something called the Mansfield Initiative, which is based on something that actually came out of the NFL, which required diversity in the hiring of football coaches. And the Mansfield Initiative in law schools, or in law firms rather, is that of certain executive level positions, at least 30% of the candidates have to be diverse. And so, you know, if you're looking to fill in your COO role, at least 30% of those candidates need to be women or LGBTQ or racially diverse. So that's one way to try to get parity at the executive level. The other thing is making sure that you're having policies implemented that actually result in the retention of women and the promotion of women. And so this tends to fall into the category of maternity leave policies. But one of the things that we're doing is making our maternity leave policy gender neutral. So if it's gender neutral, that means that men are also encouraged to take paternity leave if they're the primary caregiver. If men are taking paternity leave, then what's going to happen is this perception that women who have gone out on maternity leave have a mommy brain drain is going to start going away because men will take that time and realize, oh wait, that's not a thing. So if we start having a gender neutral paternity and maternity and parental leave policy, that creates a better environment in order for women and men to appreciate the problems and the difficulties of being a working parent. Likewise, there are, of course, the generic policies of assistance with childcare, having backup childcare options, having childcare subsidies, having policies that encourage the promotion of women internally and not just at the executive level, including for recruitment at the junior levels. And then one other aspect of policies is that you can require diversity for your external providers. Now at a law firm, we actually tend to be on the receiving end of these kind of requirements, where our clients want to make sure that if we're pitching to them, that it's not a room of all men, which is fair. And so the issue there becomes, how do we make sure that there are women represented in the pitch meetings? And in our group, that's actually really easy because we are in the LA office, there are 6 of us and 5 of us are women. So that works out pretty well. But it's one of the things that our clients really appreciate, because a lot of our in-house counsel clients do tend to be women. So they like that there's other women on the other end of the line when we're having negotiation calls. All right, so those are your policies. What's next? What's next is empowerment. And we heard Anna talk about a really beautiful mentorship experience earlier. So I'll skip mentorship and I'm gonna focus on sponsorship. So the difference between sponsorship and mentorship is that sponsorship involves using your power position, which can be at any level, to be clear, to promote women who you work with and who are below you and who are your colleagues. And so these two women behind me are behind me on the screen, but are behind me figuratively as well. I would not be here today if it weren't for Suze McCormick. She is a powerhouse in the clean tech industry, and she made sure that I get promoted in order to be speaking at events like this. She makes sure that if she hears anything positive about me, that people in positions of power at the firm know it. And then Elizabeth, who's a partner in the office next door to me, does the same thing for me. And so what I would encourage you to do is think about, okay, well, who in your life are your sponsors? And who in your life can you sponsor? Even again, if you're at a relatively junior position, you can do this with your peers. If your peers are doing really good work, talk to the people above you and talk about how great Sarah did on that project and how impressed you were with how she took the lead on it and handled it. Or if you are in a position of leadership, talk to the other people who are making promotion decisions and make sure that they know that maybe that woman who doesn't speak up very loudly in meetings is contributing amazing ideas by email. So you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room in order to have someone sponsor you. You can have a very individualized relationship with someone and still get that sponsorship relationship. So that's sponsorship. And the next point is engagement. So this also, to me, comes up on an individual level. So engagement really, on the one hand, it's engaging with HR, right? So you see in something, you say something, sort of the New York City subway advertisements. But in addition, you can say things to your peers. So one of the things that we have at MoFo is women's affinity groups, which I like to refer to colloquially in our LA office as our monthly rant about the patriarchy. But it actually ends up being a really productive monthly meeting. So it's very informal, but what happens is we exchange ideas and we talk to each other. And over the course of these rants, things bubble up where you say, wait a minute, oh, you experienced that too? Why don't we get someone in leadership to try to deal with this? And so when you're in a mass, it is much easier to have your voice get heard. So the simple example that came up in one of ours is the lactation room. So the lactation room apparently didn't have a trash bin in it, which if anyone has been at Pumping Mother, you know that you need something in order to wipe down your little pump parts, and you need a trash bin in order to throw away that paper towel. And so little things like that come up in our in our monthly rants, we were able to get that taken care of. Obviously that is the micro level, but it also works on a much higher level. And so one of the things that MoFo does really is make sure that these policies aren't just lip service, and we've been recognized for that, and I am so grateful to work at a firm where that's the case. I have had nothing but a really great experience being a woman lawyer, which again, no law firm is perfect and no lawyers are perfect, but we're doing a lot of things that really encourage enactment of policies. We're enacting those policies, we're making them happen. We're making sure that sponsorship happens on a micro level with individuals, and we're making sure that engagement happens on a group level with individuals having their voices heard at an executive level. And so, again, what I would encourage you to do is figure out, okay, well, what kind of policies are my organization missing, and how can we get those policies implemented? Is it engagement among each other at a baseline level where we can get our group voice heard, where we meet on a monthly basis, and then we can get those policies enacted? Do I need to sponsor on an individual one-on-one level? Just think about, for your own personal experience, ways that you can make these happen, and then maybe, just maybe, we'll have more women in the energy industry going forward. Thank you.